Welcome back to Self Transformation Radio. My name is Caitlin Pyle. I am your host, founder of selftransformation.com. And man, does that feel so good to say? It's just so exciting to know that I have a home online now. And yeah, speaking of that home, I had been publishing chapters of my memoir as I was writing them. But when I hired an editor, I realized, like, man, things could change with these chapters. And I don't want two different versions of it out, so I decided to unpublish them. I left the ones on my podcast though, just artistic. It's whatever. We'll save those as a relic. Mostly because I appreciate the work that went into recording and editing those episodes, and I don't want to just delete them because I put a lot of work into them. So I'm just gonna leave them there, and the blog posts I can put back up later if I feel like it. But right now they're in draft form until I'm ready to publish them. But yeah, there's been so many developments, I guess, so many ups and downs in this whole saga of realizing that I was working with a sociopath. And I wanted to share some of that with you guys, some of the lessons that will probably end up in the book anyway, but just more of like the raw, as I'm experiencing it type revelations, so to speak. So I've gone back and forth, and I still have some paperwork sitting in my inbox to sign with a law firm, or really it's a consultant who works with law firms to help sort through all of the paperwork and help me kind of work backwards and figure out what happened. But I haven't been able to bring myself to sign it because I guess you can call it cold feet, because I was like all in, right? Sometime last week I was like all in. Yeah, let's spend 10 grand or whatever it is to dig through all this paperwork and find out exactly what this guy did to me, right? And then as I coasted along and continued to focus on what I actually wanted to focus on, I realized I don't want anything to do with this person anymore. I got so far too, as not only did I decide not to hire anyone to help me retroactively go back through all of the things that I signed and trying to weed through 3 years worth of lies and nonsense, that I wrote a letter. I wrote like a 6-page I wrote a 6-page letter in 11-point Times New Roman font to my former CEO. And it was very personal, so I'm not going to read it to you here, but I decided not to send it. And the funny part is that in the letter, I told him that I wasn't writing the letter for him. I was writing it for me. And once I got it exactly the way I wanted it and read it 1,400 times and put all this energy into it, and it's my process, right? It's part of my process. And I even told them this too. I was like, this is part of my process of self-forgiveness. I'm not writing this so you'll agree with it. I'm writing this because my life has changed forever, and the realization that I am so much better without you in my life. And I felt like I needed to express that. But the more I thought about it, I was like, he doesn't need to know this. It's not going to change his life, because you cannot show a blind man a mirror. They have to open their eyes first. And from my own experience, there's always something that will open a blind person's eyes, and then they're going to be able to see it one of these days. But me sending him a detailed letter explaining to him exactly how he treated me and why that was wrong, and I printed out the emails that I found that he had written to this girl and how abusive they were, and I highlighted all the things that he did that were abusive, and I said what all these things were, and it was very cathartic for me to do. But when it came down to it, I realized I wasn't motivated at all to put any of that stuff. It was like a small little stack of paperwork in an envelope and ship it, because I've gone no contact. And why would I want to break that? Like, why would I want to give him any more of my energy? Why would I? It's just the best thing for me to do, just to focus on doing my work and sharing my story, sharing my wisdom. So I've shifted gears again, and I feel like I wanted to share that with you guys, because I think it's important that you see all of the journey and not just the highlight reel, and to hear about how I've moved through this energy that I had when I realized what I had gone through and stopped seeing myself as the bad guy. Because this type of person that vibrates at a low space, they will convince you that you're the bad guy. They will convince you that you are ungrateful for everything that they're doing for you. And if it weren't for them, then you would be in really big trouble. And they just do everything they can to make you feel terrible about yourself, because that's what helps them keep their power. And now that I realized that was what was happening, I see myself totally differently, and I don't want to give any more of my power that I've taken back away to him by engaging back into a dialogue with him, even if it's a one-sided dialogue, because at the end of the letter I said, don't you dare try to contact me ever again. But you can't tell someone not to contact you if you've just contacted them. So I think I'm just going to let my silence speak for itself, because this is the type of individual who would go months without talking to me and then pop back into my DMs in the case of TikTok or on my texts and just chat me up for hours and have so much to say and then go quiet for months again. And I realized that that was him looking for supply. It was looking for validation. It was looking for ideas. He's run business ideas by me, and I've given him so many different things and ideas, and I didn't realize that that's what he was mining for. Of course, those ideas never went anywhere because I didn't want to work with him on them, but he has tried on multiple occasions to interest me in different investment opportunities that would put us in a working space together again. No, there's no way in hell I would do that. No way in hell I would work with him again, because, yeah, I just see what an energy suck it has been. So, yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys and, yeah, give you an update on my life. I've successfully completed doing the Transform retreat, the very first one. And as I record this, it's Friday, March 22nd. Tonight, we have the kickoff party for our next Transform retreat. So that's as I'm recording this. It's not going to be published until a week later. But yeah, the second one is happening this weekend, and I could not be more excited. We have a little bit of a smaller group because we just didn't do as much marketing this time. We're basically just testing our systems and optimizing our systems, getting some new recordings, things like that. So I'm just excited to meet the group of people that are here this weekend and see what we can create together and see what kind of moves we can make in our lives together. So that's what it's all about. It's all about becoming aware of where we are, who we're being, how we're showing up, what our energy is, right? What thoughts and actions or thoughts and feelings are driving our actions, and then taking our power back. So, yep, that's what we're doing this weekend. And I have been doing some TikTok live. So if you're listening to me because you follow me on TikTok, maybe you've seen some of those, and it was fun. I did a TikTok live the other night while I was actually in my house, and that was kind of interesting because I gave some people a tour of my house, but then that was the night before that. But I did another video the following night. It was like maybe an hour and 50 minutes, and I put it in my software on my computer, and I was able to edit it down into 28 different little clips. And it took me probably 3 or 4 hours to do that, but it was still pretty productive because I was on fire that night. I had a lot of things to say, and I pieced them together into little clips for TikTok. So now I have a ton of content for TikTok that I can just post at my leisure and not worry about making new stuff all the time, which is great, being able to repurpose stuff. And yeah, that leads me to some other exciting news that I finally hired what I like to call content manager, my long-term friend. He has his own podcast. He's been creating content for a long time. He's known me since, 2019, I think, and got me into doing float therapy just randomly one day when he was looking for someone else with my same name, and he found me, invited me to float, and I did, and we became friends. I was super, super depressed at the time, and he saw me through all of that. He saw me when I was at my very worst, when I was experiencing all these things. He heard the stories I would tell about the CEO I was working with. You hear the stories of the toxic property manager that I've mentioned on this podcast before. And I mean, looking back on the people that I attracted into my life and the energy that I was in when those people entered my life, it makes total sense that I went through what I went through. And I know I was meant to go through it for a reason. And as I was talking to him on the phone last night, we hadn't spoken in quite some time. So it was great to reconnect. I was sharing with him about how much I had learned about myself and this realization that I had a sociopath for a CEO, and I've just learned so much. I am so open-minded to it now, and my eyes are open to it now. And I listened to a podcast, Danica Patrick's podcast. She had Dr. Ramani on talking about narcissism and the different types of narcissism and how the malignant ones are, I forgot what she said about the malignant ones, but it inspired me to go back to the letter that I was working on and change some things in it. But then again, as I continued writing it and printed it out for the second time after editing it, I was like, I don't really feel like I need to send this. Because these people, these people don't think you're smart. They think that they're the smart ones, and they think everything you say is stupid because they can't be wrong, right? So they cannot be wrong. They can't see it at all. And so they will do anything to hold on to their beliefs, to save their face, to save their ego. They would climb up a ladder that leads to a toilet to avoid saying that they're wrong. The pursuit of truth is not on their radar at all. So me telling my truth to this person is going to do absolutely nothing but maybe poke holes in a hornet's nest. And I'm just not wanting to do that. So yeah, I do think it's funny that there's nothing else he can take from me because he sold out all of his power for what I consider to be a paltry sum of dollars. And I told him in the letter that, he could have taken way more money from me and it would have still been worth it because what I've created in the short time since selling my former business that I had that he owned part of, I allowed him to own part of it, would not have existed, right? It would not have existed without me, but everything shifted to, oh, the business wouldn't survive without me, so you don't matter anymore, right? So things I've created since parting ways with him just pale in comparison to the money that he took from me. And so it's just funny what people are willing to do for money. And they worship money. That's just what you do. You make decisions that revolve around it. And then before you know it, all you're left with is money. And you're lonely and you're sad and you're upset that people have rejected you and you don't understand why. And it's just like, yeah, like he could have had a lifelong friend with me. And I thought we were friends for a long time, but I finally realized that like when he turned his from hot to cold, started calling me a scammer by what I was doing, that showed me, nope, he hasn't changed at all. He's shallow and unempathetic and toxic, and he dismissed my lived firsthand experience with healing, and it was just so insulting and belittling. I've witnessed his callousness, aggression, impulsivity, and paranoia, the way he's unable to handle criticism and the way he felt entitled and always lacked remorse for any of his actions. I've witnessed all those things firsthand, and I'm not the only one who's witnessed it. So it's always funny, like reading in all those old emails and stuff. It was like, wow, this guy is delusional. Like he's saying, like, I don't have a string of toxic relationships. Everybody loves working with me. Like all these things that were complete lies. And it's like, what are you trying to do? Like, convince this person to not reject you and not make her. He couldn't take no for an answer. He couldn't take no for an answer. And somebody was setting a boundary with him and he couldn't accept that. So it was like, no, you've hurt me and you need to know that you've hurt me. And I don't want to do the same thing that he was doing because I finally realized what he was doing, right? I don't want to act like him. I don't want to be in that energy. Yeah, I mean, he'll always see it the way that he wants to see it. That's just how they work. He won't see that he used coercion and fear to manipulate me. He won't see that he scared me into selling my business by spouting all kinds of garbage, like AI will eventually and inevitably wipe out job prospects for proofreaders. That was just a lie that was fueled by short-sighted paranoia. He kept me in my place by creating fear of the menace that would no doubt ensue if he didn't get his way. And that now is so evident because of the insanely unprofessional blowups that would happen whenever I questioned his decisions or expressed disagreement. And I learned from Danica's podcast with Dr. Ramani that people like that need drama to feel dominant and good about themselves. So I realized, like, wow, I only existed as an object to him. I didn't actually mean anything to him. I only served a function in his life. Supply. I was supply for him. He got everything he could, and then he had nothing to do with me. It was just textbook sociopathy. Yeah, I found everything I needed for myself, and I don't need to share that with him. I don't need to share that with him. So it's enough for me to have proof of all of it and to be able to share it openly with my audience without fear of any kind of retribution because I'm protecting his identity. Nobody needs to know who he is. I know who he is, and it's my job to alert people that people like him exist, people who are parasites that prey on women's vulnerability and emotional needs, pretending to be someone who can save them, pretending to be smarter than they are in any or all ways. And then when the women let people like that in, they take as much as they can from you while they can. They take emotionally, they take physically, and they take financially. And then when we question them or stop giving them what we want or what they want, or give any kind of indication that we don't want to give you what they believe they're entitled to, their mask drops and they reveal themselves as the monsters that they are. I really feel like these people are parasites. Yeah, I mean, I paid this guy to basically sell my audience from under me, but it was worth it because you can't put a price on freedom. I wrote that letter to put him on notice that I know who he is, but mostly it was for me and to really get clear and write out everything in one place for it to make sense for me because it was like waking up from a bad dream. Yeah, I mean, he noticed after taking control of the company that the cash cow, me, I was sick and I couldn't or wouldn't produce new courses to grow revenue. So it wasn't going to be possible for him to meet his second or third year bonus milestones. And I know that's why he pushed me so hard to sell the company instead, because he would see the most benefit the fastest that way. It was never about me or supporting me at all. It wasn't about furthering the mission of helping people have more freedom. I always knew that the money is in the list, having the audience, but keeping the ship afloat while I recovered from the divorce was not on his radar. He didn't work that way because he didn't care about me, he didn't care about the audience. He actually thought they were stupid. And yeah, I feel like people ended up buying my products that it may not have been the best fit for them, but I was always keen to help people figure out whether or not it was a good fit for them. I didn't want their money if it wasn't going to be useful for them. But he didn't feel that way. He was always about growing the revenue, and his whole being just revolved around getting more money in any way he could. It didn't matter to him who it affected. It was really both the worst and the best decision I've ever made. I learned so much from him, but working under him denigrated my self-esteem and my confidence. I felt so small and insignificant, and the fact that he would tell me that on paper I had equal power to him, it was a lie because he forced me to pay him bonuses and severance that he manipulated his way into receiving because he threatened to leave and blow up everything anytime he feared that he wouldn't get his way. So anytime I expressed to him that I didn't want to pay what he was wanting me to pay him because it's not what the paperwork said, he manipulated me and threatened me. So that means he only received what he received when I was under threat and duress. He knew exactly what to say and do to make sure he would get his way, and I had no sovereignty or real control. He wanted it that way. He wanted me to make new products so he would make more money, but I couldn't create anything new without him directly benefiting from it. And I feel like there was part of me that knew he did not deserve to benefit from my creativity any further. And he didn't remind me of my value or worth when I was at my lowest and I wanted to die. He never disagreed with me when I said terrible, false things about myself that I only believed because I had brain damage and OCD because of that brain damage. I actually listened to a recording of our 2021 board of directors meeting, and I heard him tell me that my depression was attention-seeking behavior that's common in narcissists. He was constantly reminding me of my past mistakes and how much my product sucked, how lucky I was that he turned things around, how crappy a team I had built, that my team secretly resented me. He was always insistent that every problem that he encountered was my fault, even though he worked for the company for a whole year and never even noticed that we were being scammed out of tens of thousands of dollars every month by a fraudster, like affiliate fraud. Yeah, he was too busy writing those insane emails to people he wanted to get with to bother getting familiar with whom we were paying commissions to each month, which was part of his job to protect the company. And of course, he took credit for fixing that whole issue anyway, even though I was the one who figured it out, that it was even happening because he had gotten us a cybercrime insurance policy. And thank God for that, right? But he never took any responsibility for never even noticing that it was happening for a whole year. It was all someone else's fault. So I know that he was negligent. I know that he was, and I think he knows it too, but and you just lie and say, no, there was no negligence. There was no negligence. There's nothing you can say, blah, blah, blah. Like, might is right. Whoever yells the loudest, whoever scares the other person the most, whoever's the nastiest wins in this kind of battle, because he was going to get paid an unreasonable amount of money no matter what. He didn't care at all what happened to me. He would say, or do anything to get money. It was always more important to him than the friendship I thought I had with him. And he pretended to care about me, but whenever he got the idea that his money was in question, I became the enemy immediately. I remember when we camped in the Airstream that I used to have. This was in August of 2020, which is allegedly a month after he started working for me, but he didn't actually start working for me until late August and early September. He was holding me in his arms and he told me that I like making you feel safe. And I'm sure if he were to hear this, he'd be like, "Oh, I never said that." But that just proves my point that he's a liar because he never cared about me at all. He was just using me as a means to an end for sexual gratification, an ego boost, more money for himself, and of course, the opportunity to add something pretty notable to his resume, having sold a company. And yeah, I can just see now that in many ways he never thought I would grow beyond my work at Proof Read Anywhere. I think he genuinely thought I'd never heal. And I think it's hard for him to believe that I have healed, which is why he was demanding that I show him data that my cancer was in remission. And I will have data next month. I already have data from when I went last year and it was shown in remission, way, way down from where it was. So I know I'm on the way. But it's like he can't believe that I've healed and I'm back in the world creating new stuff and helping people again. I think it probably bothers him that I waited until after we sold the company to really activate myself and blow up on TikTok. And it probably bothers him that what I'm doing with the Transform retreats is helping people. And that's probably why he called it a scam, because he wanted me to doubt myself and what I have to offer people, because he doesn't offer anything to others. All he knows how to do is take from other people. And he was really, so I've mentioned before, I used to think I was a narcissist, and I genuinely believe this. I was devastated by it, and never mind the irony of like being devastated by something and like feeling horrible about it, and a narcissist would never actually feel that way. He was so invested in that belief that I had that I was a narcissist, because as long as I believed that about myself, he was going to benefit. But he was the only person who believed me. He was the only person who believed me when I was absolutely convinced. It's so ironic because I think it was a lot easier for him to live under the guise that everyone else except him was a narcissist, because he would always tell me that every girl he dated was a narcissist. It's easier for him to live under that guise, this mask that he was traumatized and he was manipulated and lied to, which is what he was repeatedly accusing this poor woman that had rejected him. He was always the victim. He wanted me to believe that nobody truly supported me. I mean, he even said some things about my mom that, I'm not like your mom. Like your mom might do this, but I don't, and that's triangulation. He did everything he could to make sure I felt unsupported, stupid, useless, powerless. And he did that so he could extract as much cash from me as possible, as quickly as possible. And then acted like he'd earned and was entitled to that money. It's so obvious to me now. And I find it just so disgusting. And, he always said he was saving my business for me, but he didn't care about me. He didn't believe I could heal. He didn't believe that I would ever have any regrets in selling the business, as long as I believed that I had no choice and that I had to sell the business. So I think he's the real scam. He called me a scam and pot calling the kettle black. I think he's always been the scam, because anybody could have done what he did. He called it squeezing the rag, which was emailing my audience. He called it that every single month to unsustainably extract money from people. I always felt like it was selling out. He pushed my products on people who would, like I said before, be better fit for something else. And I really would have just told him that. He didn't care what was best for them, though. He just wanted the sale. And yeah, looking back on all of it, it's like he just stripped the life out of me. It was the death by 1,000 cuts that was just so, ever so slowly chipping away at my self-worth and muddling the lens through which I saw myself. And so many times, he just lied to me. He lied to me about what happened with the woman he worked with before me to make her look like the bad guy. And I know that he's done the same thing to me. I know that everyone he talks to, he talks poorly about me. I don't even need to be there to know that he does that, because he's done that with everyone else he's worked with. Everyone else. And that former coworker has continued to shine brightly even after he abused her emotionally and financially. And so I really hope it makes him squirm a little bit to see that I've done nothing but flourish since getting him out of my life. It's just so interesting that the lives of both the women that have published online that he was abusive, so egregiously abusive, that we've improved so much after being rid of him. Because when the parasite is removed, the host can finally heal and she becomes wiser. Yeah. I mean, he had convinced me that my business was in trouble and the only way forward logically was to sell it, but it wasn't true because I brought life to the business. We all are the ones who bring life to the business. And so as I healed and grew, so would the business have healed and grown. The business was only suffering because I was suffering, and the solution wasn't in hiring him and selling the whole farm. It was in healing me and planting new crops. And I really believe his decisions were all short sighted, fear based, and ignorant. He's not as intelligent as he thinks, and there's other people that are more clever than he believes. It was always like he knew better than everyone else. He doesn't get credit for my life being better now. I do. Because even if I hadn't been verifiably mentally ill for the first 2 years that he controlled the company, I wouldn't have wanted to create anything new because then he would have benefited. And I'm so glad I didn't heal until after it was inevitable that the company would be sold, because now I finally get to be who I really am and he doesn't get a single dime from any of it, which is so satisfying to me. And I know I would have been fine if I'd never hired him. If I'd never sold Proofread Anywhere, I could have pivoted my messaging in the exact same way I'm doing now. I trust myself so much more than I ever trusted him. And I don't require his permission or approval to create anything new anymore. And that has allowed me to come back to life, because working with him felt like an intellectual prison. When I did have an idea here and there, they weren't ever good enough. He always had a reason to say it would never work, or nobody needs that. It's just fluff, you know? But I noticed that he never had any ideas of his own. They were always somebody else's ideas. And my purpose with this podcast, with everything that I'm doing and have been doing, even with Proofread Anywhere, you can tell by the name, Proofread Anywhere, my purpose has always been to help people have more freedom. It was never about teaching them how to make money, proofreading, or whatever. But he watered down my message to where it was only about making money proofreading, and he called the content that I'd created to help my students become better people fluff and even a scam. But not everybody's like him. Not everyone's a snake, just trying to get what they can from people. Not everyone takes credit for what others have done, and not everyone parasitically looks for opportunities to take from other people so you don't have to create anything for yourself. He genuinely believes he deserves everything that he takes from people, especially when he's orchestrated it so that he would be legally entitled to it no matter how unethical it is. He genuinely believed that others are less educated or valuable. He's an expert in something that's not even real. It's meaningless. Finance is meaningless. All of it's fake. Capitalism, the whole matrix is fake, but he's built his whole world around it, so it means everything to him. Money was his god, and, I just wish him luck worshiping that god. I'm not going to be a part of it, and the only reason I'm not taking legal action to seek damages for fraud is because I hope his soon-to-be wife gets some of his money in the divorce instead. I think it all evens out. It all evens out. What goes around comes around, because eventually the mask is going to crack in front of her, because, you can only pretend for so long. Right? You can only pretend for so long. It's exhausting. And all those emails I found, I'm so grateful I found them. They're so eye-opening. I could see that he spent a solid month languishing over these women instead of actually working. He still got paid. I saw how he gaslit, belittled, insulted, and lied to these women, especially the poor college student. Just repetitive word salads, accusing her of doing the exact same thing that he was actually doing to her. Yeah. And it's funny, he called me delusional multiple times. I'm a lot of things. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a liar. And I just can't say the same thing about him. And I do have tons of paperwork proving that I was not mentally fit when I hired him. No doctor would have said I was mentally fit at that time. None. Yeah. And the only reason that I ever found him even remotely attractive was because my hormones were off balance. I see him clearly now, and gosh, I think about the things that he said about other women when we were first starting to work together, and I can only imagine what kind of stuff he's fed to his fiance about not just me, but the other women that he's worked with, other women that he's dated, just to make himself look like he's not a snake. I see right through it, and I think eventually his wife will too. So my plans now, I'm just never going to speak to him again. He has no power over me or my business. His role terminated the day that he paid himself a massive severance because he's lost his job. He has no more responsibilities. None. And the mask, it came off when he started accusing me of scamming people, and that's why I blocked him, and I'm never going to speak to him again, because I realized he was always a false friend, and I've healed now, and I can see it so clearly, and that's why I'm sharing it with you, because it's so important. so important, especially when it comes to our business and giving people ownership over things that we've created, that they have the right energy. And I think that's why it's so important to teach people energy awareness, which is all of day one during the Transform retreats, because we can be aware of what energy we're showing up with and what that energy, like energy attracts like energy. So I was attracting a fighter because I was in fighter energy. Yeah, it's the malignant narcissist. That's what I learned on Danica Patrick's podcast, that the malignant narcissists are exploitative. They exploit people. They take advantage of people when they're vulnerable. They find all your vulnerabilities and then they exploit them. So that's why he was constantly reminding me of, like, when people would leave bad reviews, he would just paste them to me. And just as a reminder, he would never paste the positive ones. It's just wild. It's been such a wild ride. And I'm just, for this to be the next step in my spiritual awakening journey, it's mind blowing to me because I thought I had him figured out. I thought, like, oh, he's just, there's always something off and he couldn't be categorized, in my opinion. I was like, this is me before. Like, he'll figure himself out, he'll figure himself out and he will. But I never would admit to myself, I think, in a way to protect my own ego and to prevent myself from dealing with the fact that I had been wrong about him this whole time. I refused to see it for what it was and to see him for who he was. But once I did, once I just dropped that and dropped that need to be right about him and saw him for who he was, like, it just changed everything. It's changed everything. Yeah. So I do hope that it has been helpful for me to share in detail my experience with a malignant narcissist, sociopath, someone who took advantage of me when I was at my freaking worst. And that by me sharing these stories helps you with your own awareness in your own life. And if you're in a situation like this, you might recognize the same types of patterns and the same, because it's textbook, right? They all have the same tactics. They use fear, manipulation, paranoia. They're vindictive and they're nasty when they don't get their way and they perceive that someone's wronged them. They get so nasty and vindictive. They're not emotionally mature, but they think they are. So, and of course, they blame you when they freak out. Like, you did this to them, you made them feel this way. So, very cathartic to be able to share that step in the direction I'm going, not being the kind of person who has to stir up the past, right? The past is no longer here. And that was a big thing of it for me too, is realizing that, yeah, I could send him this letter and send him the printout. I even had my AI software transcribe the voice note that I found. I had it transcribed and, highlighted some things that I was like, this is evidence that you're exactly who I've realized you are. Like, and it's so funny. I've been targeted with some videos on TikTok about not needing to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to even prove anything to yourself. Like, stop fighting so hard to prove it. And where that can come from, it can come from the past of feeling like you had to prove yourself to your parents, prove yourself to your teachers. And that's just patterns that we settle into. And we think that's what we have to do. But we don't have to prove anything to anyone. I don't need to prove to this guy that he exploited me. He knows. He knows. Whether or not he wants to admit that to himself is not my business. It's really not my business what he thinks or feels about me. It really isn't. That's why there's no point in me sharing this letter for any reason. But there was a point in me writing it. And I think I'm just going to hold on to it for a while and percolate on it and marinate in it. I don't even know if those are the right words for what I'm doing, but I'm proud of myself for coming through this a stronger, more aware person who is making the right choice for herself and is protecting her energy instead of just letting it spill everywhere. Because that's essentially what it is. Like, I have all this energy that I've created in this letter, and then, like, it's just it's my own proof if I ever need to remind myself. If I ever need to remind myself of what happened if I start falling back into old patterns of like, oh, he was such a savior, he saved me, I'm so grateful for him, because that was like where he wanted me. He wanted me like worshiping him. He wanted me feeling like I was nothing without him. And whenever I find myself falling back into those feelings of, oh man, I wonder how he's doing, I honestly wish the best for him. I truly do, because that's another part of this as well. And it's funny because I used to be religious. I'm not religious anymore, and I don't even consider myself like a Christian or anything, but I still listen to like teachings of Jesus. I still read the Bible and learn from the scriptures, which the Christians have claimed for themselves. It's not a Christian book. The Bible is not a Christian book. Jesus is not a Christian leader. He did not come here to be a Christian leader at all. So, yeah, just throwing that out there. But bless your enemies, bless those who wrong you. So that's my official, I guess, stance on this, is that I wish him the best. I truly did love him. I do love him. I do forgive him. He is me in another life. We all come from the same cloth. We're all cut from the same cloth, but we all have different circumstances. He's been through stuff in his life that have made him who he is. And if I had gone through that same stuff and I was him, I would be him. So that's why we can't judge each other. I made some dumb decisions, one of which was hiring him. But it was also, I see it both ways, depends on what lens you look at the situation through. It was the best decision I've ever made because I'm here now, flourishing in a way that I couldn't when I was working with him. And I did the time. I signed the dotted line and I gave him the control of the company and I paid for it dearly. But I do believe that everything happens for me and not to me. So that's where I end with all this, is knowing that it happened for me and not to me. And I'm acting as if that's true because that's what I believe. That's what I believe. So I do wish him the best. And yeah, if he's listening to this, I love you. I wish you the best in your marriage. Please don't hurt her. I really do hope you wake up one day. I can't do it for you, though. It's not my job. But yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or want to reach me, go to selftransformation.com. You can fill in the contact form or email me hello@caitlinpyle.com. But make sure you spell it right. People try to email me and they're like, why didn't you answer my email? And I'm like, did you spell it right? And they're like, oh. They just assume that Caitlin is spelled with a Y, and it's not. I wish you all a great weekend. If this is coming, I think it's probably going to come out on a Friday. So I wish you all a great weekend, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye, friends.